Woo, wait until you guys hear about this one. Before we get into it, though, I do want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope everybody's been having a wonderful week. I hope everybody's feeling good and feeling great and getting outside more, drinking your water while the weather is good. Take advantage of the weather while it's good, if it's good where you're at. So in today's video, whoa, we are going to talk about it. I watched this documentary, I guess you would call it a documentary, an episode about these two best friends with my husband here recently, and I was holding on to my shimmies. I mean, the whole way through, from the beginning to the end, and it was so interesting and intriguing, and me getting flashbacks of certain things and just all kinds of stuff. Do y'all ever watch a true story or a documentary, and then when it's over, you start researching all the people, everything? If you guys have never seen the movie / documentary or reenactment named The Society of the Snow or Society of the Snow, that is a phenomenal movie. Them actors did amazing. But I'm telling you, for days after I watched that, I was researching all the real people, watching interviews, reading translated interviews and translating them through Google so I could read those too, and crying watching interviews afterwards. I mean, the story is out of this world. Well, this story was so intriguing to me that I spent days afterwards doing the same thing, doing all the researching that I could, trying to figure out where the people were and what really happened and what was left out of this episode that me and my husband watched. So I'm going to tell you as much as I can in today's video. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, Factor. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, and the cooking fatigue, and instead get chef-crafted and dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your front door. And Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever. And they take the stress out of meal planning and completely set you up for success. And with over 35 different meal options to choose from, you can choose from all kinds of stuff like Calorie Smart, vegan, veggie, keto, protein plus, and so much more. One of the quickest things that will derail me from my nutrition goals is skipping meals, and it is something that I see so common with so many people that I love, my friends, my family, skipping meals during the day, waiting all day long to eat, and then eating everything at nighttime or hitting those drive-thrus on the way home. But with Factor, you get highly nutritious and highly delicious meals delivered to your door that you can just pop in the microwave for 2 to 3 minutes, and you have a good, delicious, hearty lunch. Or breakfast, because they have breakfast items too. And they have lots of snacks, and they have smoothies, and they have these delicious new refreshers that are so good. And also a big plus with Factor is that they are very flexible. So if you want to skip a week or pause your subscription at any time, you absolutely can with no pressure. If you want to try Factor, all you gotta do is go to factor75.com and use my code ChristinaRandall50, and you can get 50% off of your first box plus 20% off of your next month's orders. Yes, all you got to do is go to factor75.com, use my code ChristinaRandall50, and you can get 50% off of your first box and 20% off of your next month's orders today. Thanks again, Factor. So, okay. Before we get into this story, I want y'all to think about your best friend. How long have you been best friends with your best friend? How much do you trust your best friend? Maybe you've been best friends with your best friend for 5 years, a year, since middle school, 20 years, 25 years, okay? And how much you trust this person. That brings me to the case that we're going to be talking about today with Rachel and Janie. Now, I do want to let you guys know that Rachel's last name has not been released to the public, so I'm just going to refer to her as Rachel. Everything in this video is public information that I found researching very public sources. I am not a professional. Please go do your own research, form your own opinions. Just don't show hate to anybody, anywhere. Okay, so let's just start at the beginning. Back in 1995, Rachel was living in Mill Creek, Utah, when she met a woman named Janie Ridd. Now, at the time, Rachel was just 22 years old, and Janie was 26, so there was 4 years between the two of them. However, they're both younger, in their 20s. Now, Rachel described Janie as a very nice and sweet person who was a little shy, and she was an introvert. Rachel, she had just gone through a divorce and she was living at home with her parents again. So she was feeling alone and she wanted a friend. Rachel and Janie became very close very fast. As a matter of fact, Rachel and Janie ended up moving in together after only knowing each other for a couple months. It seemed like the perfect timing because Rachel had been wanting to move out of her parents' house and Janie had been living alone, but she was wanting a roommate because her home had recently been broken into, which made her uneasy about being at home alone. Rachel says that when she first moved in with Janie, she felt like she was very safe and she was very happy. She was working as a paramedic and she was enjoying being in her 20s. Now, because Janie was the older one and she had more experience living on her own, Rachel ended up letting her best friend Janie control all of their household finances. And it seemed to work very well for Rachel not having to worry about it. And so things seemed to be okay. Now, not long after moving in together, Rachel started bringing Janie out to socialize more than she had before Rachel moved in. Like I said earlier, Janie was pretty introverted and she was shy, but Rachel was the extrovert. She loved to go out and socialize. She loved to go out, partying, so to say. And so she would bring Janie, and Janie got to have those experiences quietly by her side. And Rachel really wanted to see Janie get out and have some fun. But things started to kind of get weird. It started to seem like Janie didn't like when Rachel socialized with anyone other than her. She seemed to almost get jealous and possessive of Rachel, especially when Rachel was with a guy. But Janie told Rachel that she just wanted to protect Rachel from guys that were not good for her. Rachel thought that was understandable. Now, other people that were around, they thought that maybe Janie had feelings for Rachel that surpassed friendship, that maybe she was possessive over Rachel and jealous over Rachel because she wanted to be with Rachel. However, Rachel says she never believed that. She always believed that the two of them were just really good friends and that Janie was just looking out for her best interest. Rachel would also say that her and Janie were as close as sisters and they continued to be for decades. Then, in January of 2010, again, they met in 1995, so we're 15 years in at this point. Rachel ended up getting a herniated disc in her back, and she ended up having to quit work. This meant that she was not making any money anymore at this point. However, Janie told Rachel to not worry about it, that she would cover her part of the finances and help her out. Around the same time, Rachel found out that she was pregnant. Rachel says not long after she found out that she was pregnant, she says that the father of who she was pregnant by opted out. So Rachel, now being alone in her pregnancy, on top of already dealing with this huge back injury where she had to quit being a paramedic, was going through a lot. Knowing this, Janie offered to help Rachel and helped to raise her son, Ryder, who ended up being born in that same year. And then Ryder would later be diagnosed with autism. Rachel loved him so deeply, and so did Janie. They were basically raising Ryder together. Now, with Rachel living with her best friend, no father in the picture. At this point, she's been living with her best friend for 15 years. I mean, they're just as close as they can be. Living with your best friend for 15 years, that's a long time, okay? Having the baby, little boy Ryder, him being diagnosed with autism. She's not working because she's having these health issues, and Janie is helping her out and being the other parent, basically, with her. Rachel decided that this would be a good time to go out and purchase some sort of life insurance. And she said that her thought process with this was she's having these health issues. If anything ever happened to her, whoever took care of her son, Ryder, would be set or have, the money in order to take care of him. Because of her close relationship with her best friend, Janie, she made her as the beneficiary. And on top of that, Rachel listed Janie as the guardian of Ryder if anything ever happened to her. Now, I've seen multiple different things online when researching this. I saw that not long after Rachel gave birth to Ryder, she ended up herniating the disc in her back again. But then I also saw somewhere that while she was giving birth, she herniated her disc again. But either way it goes, she already had this issue with her back. She delivers her son and she re-injures her back in the same way or probably even worse. This time, Rachel ended up having to have surgery because of it. She ended up having this back surgery in 2015. So at this point, they've been friends for 20 years. When she got home after the surgery, Janie, her best friend, offered to be in charge of taking care of Rachel and Ryder. Janie would do all of the things for Ryder, like taking him to school. She was feeding him. She was also making sure that Rachel was taking her medication and recovering and seemingly just taking care of everything. And Janie was working a job that allowed her to have a very flexible schedule. So she was really taking over most of the responsibilities with Ryder. Something that Rachel said that she thought was a little weird was when the two of them, Janie and Rachel, would go to school for events for Ryder, everybody there thought that Janie was Ryder's mother. I mean, the principal, the teachers, everybody came up to talk to her best friend about her son like it was her son. Rachel would go on to say that it was at this point that her and Janie started almost fighting over who got to spend time with Ryder. Now, because of this, Rachel had to put her foot down and remind Janie that Ryder was her son, and she had the final say in things that went on with him. However, Rachel had to keep having more and more back surgeries. Between 2015 and 2018, Rachel ended up having 7 back surgeries total. And each time, Janie would have to take all the responsibility over Ryder and for everything else going on in the home, as well as giving Rachel her medication. And that also included the pain medication that she was on. Then in 2018, and not long after another surgery, Rachel checked the mail to find paperwork. And in this paperwork, it stated Janie was suing her for custody of Ryder. Now, I want y'all to think about this. She's in the house. Now, I know she's having a lot of issues. And I had a lot of questions at this point, like why wasn't her family helping her, Those answers I did not get, so we're going to roll with what we know here. She's with her best friend. Her best friend's doing everything for her, helping her out. She's having surgery after surgery because of her back. And if anybody's ever had back issues and had to have back surgery, it is almost like a never-ending cycle. It is a nightmare. I've never experienced it, but I've watched family members experience it, okay? She's at home. She goes and checks the mail and finds out that her best friend that she's trusting to take care of her and her kid is taking custody away from her, and she doesn't even know it. So naturally, Rachel freaks out. She immediately calls Janie and asked her what was going on. When Rachel asked Janie flat out if she was suing her for custody of Ryder, Janie just simply said yes and hung up the phone on her. This scared Rachel so much that she ended up calling the police and telling them that her best friend had her son and he was not giving him back to her. The cops came and they ended up telling Rachel that, hey, we got something that we need to tell you. So Rachel's there, she's freaking out, like she's got my son. She knows that she's vulnerable because she hasn't worked. She's living there. She's been trusting her best friend of 20 plus years at this time. Her son is autistic and she's got her son, and the cops come and say, hey, you probably should sit down because we need to tell you something. It hasn't been served to you yet, but Janie has actually filed a protective order against you, a restraining order. So Janie had all this stuff going on behind the scenes, plotting against her, and she had no idea. If that protective order or restraining order was to go through, Rachel would not be allowed to be around Janie or Ryder. As a matter of fact, Janie had told the police that she was worried about Ryder being around Rachel because of Rachel being on all these pain medications, opioids, and whatnot. Rachel said that at that point, she had no choice but to pack up all the stuff that she had and go to a hotel without her son, Ryder. 10 days later, CPS came to talk to Rachel, and Rachel told them that she didn't have a substance problem. She was only taking the medication after her surgery to manage the pain. Janie apparently forgot to mention the surgery part to CPS. She just made it sound like Rachel was just like popping all these pills for no reason because she had some sort of like addiction. Now, this is when CPS decided that it was safe to return Ryder back to his mother, Rachel. Instead of going back to Janie's house, however, Rachel and Ryder went to a shelter. Now, Rachel says that she was very appreciative and grateful to be able to go to this shelter and be at this shelter. But as you guys can imagine, it was extremely challenging. And it was a challenging place for her to be there with her son, Ryder, who has autism. He was constantly asking Rachel if they could go home. 6 weeks after being at this shelter, Janie called Rachel right out of the blue and asked if she could see Ryder. Now, when I saw this part, me and Jeremy were both going, no, you didn't. Not at this point. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to be concerned about you and maybe feel like they've done enough for you, but the sneaky part behind her back is the part that would make me nervous as a person, right? If you don't like what I'm doing, or if you want to take my son, that's whatever. Let me know. You don't think I'm fit, whatever. But the sneaky steps she took behind her back, how could you trust this person again? However, they had been friends for like 20 plus years at this point, and Ryder loved Janie. So Rachel agreed to meet up at a park where Janie apologized to Rachel for what happened. As a matter of fact, Janie said that she was in a dark place at the time and that she was actually doing better. And at this point, Janie invited Rachel and Ryder to move back in with her. Rachel said yes, and she moved back in. Her and Ryder did. Now, Rachel knew that she had another surgery coming up, and she didn't have anyone else to help her at the time while she was recovering. But little did Rachel know that Janie would only make Rachel's recovery much, much worse. In April of 2019, Rachel had her neck surgery, okay? And the amount of surgeries that this woman had, I just can't even imagine. That alone, even if everything else in her life was going perfect, even if she lived in a mansion and had billions of dollars and people waiting on her hand and foot, I mean, the constant in and out of surgeries, or having a surgery and thinking, okay, this is going to be the one that makes it better, and it doesn't, and then you have to go and get another one. Some of y'all know what that feels like. That alone is a lot. And a lot is an understatement. But after she had this next surgery, Janie was again helping Rachel recover. Specifically, Janie was cleaning and redressing Rachel's incision site on the back of her neck. But then Rachel started noticing pain at that incision site. So she ended up asking Janie to take a look. So she's got this incision back here. Her best friend is the one that is taking the dressing off, what needs to be done, cleaning it, but it's really hurting this time. And Rachel is a woman who's had a bunch of surgeries, so she knows when something feels different. Rachel said that Janie cleaned it, spent some time rubbing it, and she rewrapped it, and she said that it looked fine. Now later, Rachel would say that she thought it was weird, like why was she rubbing her incision site? But she said that it looked fine. As days went by though, Rachel was in more and more pain, and her neck began to swell to the point that she was having difficulty breathing. So Rachel ended up going to the doctor and asked the doctor to have a look at it. Now, at the doctor's office, when the doctor unwrapped the incision site, Rachel says that he was completely taken back. The incision was severely infected, and Rachel said that the doctor told her that he had never seen an infection like that. So she's in there. She's like, oh my gosh, it's hurting. I feel like I can't breathe. He's like, let me take a look. He pulls the wrapping off and he goes, I've never seen an infection like this. Matter of fact, Rachel said that the doctor told her that it looked like blue cheese. Yeah. So she was immediately taken to the ER by ambulance. At the hospital, the incision had to be reopened and cleaned completely out. A culture was taken that came back positive for MRSA. And if you don't know what MRSA is a very serious type of staph infection that's become resistant to many antibiotics used to treat like ordinary staph infections. It is commonly contracted in hospitals. Rachel was immediately started on a very powerful IV antibiotic, and she initially had a bad reaction to it, but she did end up recovering and she was able to go home. Rachel says that she remembers around this time that her and Janie were watching a true crime documentary together. In this documentary, a wife ended up killing her husband by poisoning him with antifreeze. Rachel says that she remembers telling Janie how dumb that was. They're sitting there on the couch, y'all know what I'm talking about for sure, watching this true crime documentary with each other and, eating popcorn. Oh my gosh, antifreeze, that is so stupid. Why would you use that? She said that she told her antifreeze can be found in an autopsy. That is silly. She went on to tell Janie that if you're really going to poison someone and you want it to go undetected, you should use insulin because it's a chemical that's already found in the human body. Insulin is an essential hormone and it helps your body turn food into energy, and it also manages your blood sugar levels, except in diabetics. If you have diabetes, your body cannot make enough insulin or it cannot use it properly, so you have to inject the insulin into your body yourself. But little did Rachel know that she was actually helping Janie plot a scheme against her. In June of 2019, Rachel says that she remembers Janie putting her in bed and giving her medication. The next thing she knew, she woke up in the hospital. When she wakes up in the hospital and she's figuring out, why am I here? What happened? This is when she was told that she had a critically low blood glucose level of 13. Glucose is the amount of sugar in your body. The average healthy level is somewhere between, 80 and 110. It's exactly what diabetics have to keep under control by using insulin. But Rachel, she wasn't diabetic, and this was completely shocking to not only Rachel, but it was also shocking to her medical team who had been working on her all these years, taking her blood constantly, and now all of a sudden she's got this issue. After running many tests and not being able to figure out what caused this critical drop in Rachel's blood sugar, the doctors just chucked it up to a medical fluke and ended up sending Rachel back home. Now, Rachel's sister did mention that while her and Janie were in the waiting room, while Rachel was in the hospital, that Janie seemed completely emotionless, and Rachel just assumed that this was Janie's way of processing all that had happened. But then, 2 days after going home, it happened again. Rachel went to sleep at home and she woke up in the hospital with a critically low glucose level again. This time, Rachel was kept in the hospital for 8 days. Every test was ran. Every specialist came in and checked Rachel. No one could figure out what was happening with her. In September of the same year, 2019, it happened again. And again, Rachel was tested for everything and nothing came of it. The doctors and Rachel's friends were starting to become suspicious that Rachel was injecting herself with insulin for attention. Yeah, Rachel swore that she wasn't. And it is said that Rachel was so scared at this point that at night before she would go to bed, she would literally eat spoonfuls of sugar to try to keep her glucose level up. However, the spoonful of sugars did not help because time after time, Rachel continued to end up in the hospital. One time, she went in for another infection in her neck, and the culture came back positive for the bacteria E. coli. Now, E. coli bacteria isn't typically found in surgical wounds because it is only normally found in water, food, and the intestines of people and animals. But then, one day, everything changed. In December of 2019, according to Rachel, Janie seemed a little off. Something seemed very dark about her, to the point where she was even leaving Ryder in situations that she didn't believe was very safe. So Rachel told Janie that she was taking Janie out of her will and she was going to make her father the beneficiary of Ryder's legal guardianship if anything was to ever happen to her. Which, if I would have been Rachel's friend at that time, I'd have been like, girl, just do it. Don't tell her that you're going to do it, but just do it quietly. Nevertheless, as you guys can imagine, after everything that Janie had did for Rachel, it completely enraged her. At the same time, the local FBI office was tipped off by an undercover FBI agent saying that there was a person attempting to purchase $300 worth of Versa on the dark web. Now, this was considered a purchase of an item that could be used for mass destruction, and this was very concerning to the FBI. Versa is very similar to MRSA in that it is an incredibly serious staph infection. However, with this strain specifically, it is even more antibiotic resistant, especially to the same antibiotic that ended up saving Rachel's life when she had MRSA. The FBI immediately started an investigation, and this is when they found that the person who was trying to purchase this Versa was none other than Janie. They also learned all about Janie trying to get custody of Rachel's son, Ryder, and wondered if it was related. Janie was on the dark web pretending to be a science teacher trying to purchase Versa for a science experiment. When Janie made the order, she requested overnight shipping, like she needed it immediately. And by the way, again, as I'm going through this documentary, my husband, I'm like, the dark web, what is that? I don't need y'all to tell me in the comment section. This is me and my husband having a conversation. How do you get there? What are they doing? They're ordering stuff off of there. Oh my gosh. I remember being a kid and being like, don't say that over the phone. The police is listening, knowing dang good and well now the police was not worried about us at 14 years old talking about a dime bag. But she's literally ordering stuff off of the dark web, which we know is a bad place. That's why it's called that. And having it overnighted and sent to you in your name hello. Fortunately, the order was intercepted by this undercover FBI agent. The local FBI unit took this as an opportunity to go undercover and plant a fake package at Janie's P.O. box that she was supposed to have the real Versa delivered to. And they all sat and waited outside the UPS store to see if Janie came to pick it up. And guess what? She did. They ended up following Janie back to her office, and then that's when they made contact with her and they began to question her. During this interview, Janie initially said that she thought that she bought coffee, which is so interesting, right? She thought she was buying coffee beans.
I did pick up a package today. I thought it was, he said he was sending me some coffee beans. Is there something weird inside of it that I should be concerned about?
The second story that she told was that the item that she purchased was so she could make beer at home for New Year's Eve. But she hadn't bought any other supplies to make beer at home. When the agents pushed her harder, Janie said that she did purchase Versa because she wanted to do some research on it to help Rachel.
What is the biological that you ordered? You think it was some kind of a stuff? Did it ever cross your mind to use the biological agent on Rachel? No. I wouldn't even know how to do that. No, she's my best friend, and whether we argue or not, she's been my best friend for 25 years. I love her like a sister.
So finally, after they got that out of her, she finally admitted that yes, she was purchasing that item. This is when they arrested 51-year-old Janie, and they arrested her for the attempt to purchase an item of mass destruction. The agents then went to the house with a search warrant where they had to explain what was going on to Rachel. Now, at first, the agents just sat down with Rachel and they were asking her a ton of questions about Janie. And Rachel said that she was so confused, and Rachel was talking so positive about her. She's my best friend of 25 years. I love her. And then when they finally told her, Rachel was completely shocked. She didn't believe what the agents were telling her at first. Rachel genuinely thought that there must have been some sort of misunderstanding. But then the agents told Rachel that this was not the first time that Janie ordered something off the dark web. So Rachel asked if Janie could order insulin on the dark web. That's when everything just began to click for her. Janie must have been injecting Rachel with insulin when she was in bed sleeping all those times that she ended up in the hospital with critically low glucose levels. As the investigation continued to progress, more and more information started to come out. And not only was Janie ordering insulin and Bursa on the dark web, but she also ordered sedatives like ketamine. Agents did find an empty insulin injector pen at Janie's office. This pen had Rachel's DNA found on the inside of it. They also learned, after going through Rachel's medical records, that when her surgical wound was infected with E. coli, the doctor said that it was injected directly into the wound.
But Janie Ridd had done, in addition to an attack with insulin on more than one occasion, had also injected the victim with a substance that led to her testing positive for E. coli. I'll let you guess what the substance was.
Right.
So they think that Janie tried to kill Rachel at least 5 times during that year alone. Janie was officially charged with aggravated abuse of a vulnerable adult, attempted aggravated abuse of a vulnerable adult, and attempted acquisition of a biological weapon. Janie pled guilty to the charges, and she was sentenced 1 to 20 years. And when me and my husband was sitting there watching the show, we're like, 1 to 20? That means she could be out in 1 or even 20? This is dangerous stuff.
When I was reading my statement, I could see her. She didn't care. Strangers seem to care more than she does. That was really painful for me.
At her first parole hearing, Janie was granted parole and released after spending 25 months in prison. Yeah, 25 months, you guys. The calculation that you have to go through to do all of this. We're not talking about an impulsive decision that you make in the heat of the moment. When asked, though, the prosecutor said that he didn't charge Janie with attempted murder because he didn't have enough evidence to prove that she was actually trying to kill Rachel.
But I'm wondering, it seems like a case where you could have easily charged attempted murder.
That was a hard question for me throughout the entire case. Let me explain just briefly, and I'll be candid. Other prosecutors likely would have done it differently. But in my mind, an ethical prosecutor always charges a case conservatively and then prosecutes aggressively.
Right.
And conservative charging practices in this instance meant looking very closely at the elements of attempted murder to see if I could prove it. We had the prior instances where we had circumstantial evidence and even some direct evidence that Ms. Ridd had injected her roommate with insulin. But I didn't have evidence to show that she intended to kill the victim on those times. I think I could easily prove that she wanted to cause the victim terrible pain, terrible suffering, but I couldn't necessarily say that she wanted to kill the victim.
Now, we watched this on a new episode of The Worst Roommate Ever, and it is on Netflix. In it, at the very end, a clip of Janie talking to someone while she is in jail is played. In the clip, Janie says, "I know what's going to happen. I'm going to end up out of here, and I'm going to find a way to get him away from her. He needs to come back to me now." Now, she is out. Okay, so Janie is out now. She has been out. She served 25 months, which, again, is mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing. I was listening to the prosecutor do this interview afterwards, and when he was asked about it, he said that it's something to do with Utah's laws and their system there, that when she went before the parole board thought that with Janie's education, that, she was more suitable on the street, and she is under supervision. She's supposed to be under some sort of tight supervision. I don't know if that's house arrest, or I don't know if that's probation, or what it is. But to me, it's I don't know about that, you guys. Like that scares me. And I don't want to say, ooh, scary like the boogeyman. But again, and I say this in a lot of the videos, it's one thing when somebody makes an impulsive decision. Right or wrong, it needs to be dealt with, right? If it's a wrong decision, it needs to be dealt with. Okay. But when you have a person that calculatingly thinks about these things, searches things up, has things ordered, does all, we're talking about a year plus in the making, that kind of person to me, in my unprofessional personal opinion, is scary. Because how do you go to sleep every night knowing what you're planning? Looking at your friend sick in the bed. This whole time where Janie was telling the CPS workers that Rachel was all addicted and had all these issues, which, mind you, I don't know who can have that many surgeries. I want to say that she had 17 surgeries in total and not have some sort of at least physical addiction to pain medication and it be completely out of her control anyways, because you don't have 17 surgeries. You know what I mean? So that aside, but the fact that Janie was ordering this other sedatives and stuff, who knows what all she was putting in her system? I ain't even gonna lie. I begin to wonder how many of those surgeries Rachel really even needed. And God bless Rachel's soul, because when I watched her and I watched interviews of her afterwards, I thought, she seems so nice, and no offense if she ever sees this, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but almost naive, right? Because even when the FBI agent sat down in her house and spoke to her face to face, she was still taken up for Janie. Oh no, she would never. She put a restraining order on you and was going behind your back at CPS, girl. Yes, she will. Yes, she would. I have seen people get more time than that for far less. And it's just shocking to me. Shocking, shocking, shocking. There is a happy ending with this story as far as Rachel goes. She's doing well. She has her son Ryder. He seems so precious. She's found unique ways to communicate with him and to get him to communicate. And she uses music with her son. And she seems happy. And she's walking. And she seems healthy from what we can see. So that is wonderful. Have y'all heard about this? Have you? Have you ever had somebody plot against you that you loved and you trusted? I mean, that type of thing, it can really change you. And wow. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Other than that, I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching this video, and I will see y'all in the next one. Love you guys. Bye.